From FingerLakes1.com, I'm Josh Durso, and this is Inside the FLX. Today our program begins at a press conference held earlier this week. Assemblyman Phil Palmesano, who serves the 132nd District, joined a chorus of state legislators who oppose an incinerator proposed in Romulus, New York. While that's been one of the most discussed topics in Assembly and State Senate and across the Finger Lakes region as a whole, it's hardly the only thing going on. So we have Assemblyman Palmesano in studio today. Thank you so much for coming in and making the time. Obviously, a long drive from Corning, but we're grateful to have you here.
It's great to be with you. Thanks, Josh.
So let's start with a little background, how you got into politics, why you got into politics.
Sure.
And set the scene for what has been probably really enjoyable 4 terms now.
Yeah, I was, before I ran for office, I was actually a longtime staffer for some of our area representatives, some of them Jim McAllister. I was with him for 9 years. I worked for a former congressman and former state senator, which gave me some good background. I enjoyed that part of the job because it was basically helping people in the district with problems, solving problems. And there's one story I talk when I go talk to students. It's my favorite thing to do in the classroom about encouraging them to get involved. I tell a story that really made an impact on me was when I knew I wanted to be involved in politics because of the impact it had, helping someone who had a problem that they were running into an issue with insurance companies, and we got involved and we helped solve that problem, bringing people together. And after that, about 2 weeks later, got a handwritten letter back from the family to me personally saying, thank you for your interaction. And if it wasn't for you, you helped my wife avoid permanent physical deterioration. I hope Assemblyman McAllister knows the good work you do in his name. To me, I tell the kids, that's when I hit me that you can make a difference in politics and public service. If you don't forget the people who put you there and you do it for the right reasons. And I also tell a story about way back when I grew up in Hornell. My best friend's aunt, we went through a terrible mayor's race. It tore the town apart. It was just negative and personal, nasty things. The thing about politics people don't like. And she asked me to get involved in the local committee, and I said, why would I want to do that? After what we went through, I don't understand what you want me to do. Why would you want me to do that? And she looked at me and she said, so you don't like what's going on here, do you? And I go, and she goes, you think things should change, don't you? And I go, yes. She goes, then why don't you get in there and do something about it? And that kind of resonated. Listen, it's easy to complain from the sidelines, but if you want to make things happen, you have to get involved, engaged in the community. And that's what I try to encourage our young people, especially, to make sure your voice is heard. You have to get engaged in the process and make sure if it's an issue, whether it doesn't necessarily mean running for office, but if it's an issue you care about, speaking up, not being afraid to question your elected officials, because we work for you. Mm-hmm. And I'm a firm believer in public service because I see the good you can do each and every day for our district. And that's what I try to do each and every day in my job as an assemblyman for the 132nd Assembly District. How
difficult has it become over the years as we've seemed to get into more of a politically divided time frame? How difficult has it become to keep going and keep saying, this is good, you should be involved, you should do this, compared to the way it was when you first ran, back in the early mid-2000s?
Don't get me wrong, it's frustrating. That's the kind of message I even want to say. I don't care what profession you choose, there's a thing you don't like about it. But you remember on what drew you there. And one thing I'm probably most proud about that I've done through my years in the Assembly is trying to form an exchange, legislative exchange with my downstate colleagues. Too many of us all want to point the finger and say it's a crowded school in the city of New York, and going to the most diverse school in the country where 162 different dialects, 200 different nationalities over 3 towns, where you go into the parking lot and where the playground area is normally for kids to run around, there's a bunch of trailers on the parking lot. So the bell rings and the kids go from the trailer, put their backpack and winter coat on, they walk from the trailer to the school and from the school to the trailer, or have to walk up 5 flights of steps to get to a half a gymnasium for 162 kids, which is just eye-opening,
Mm-hmm.
or housing issues. So by doing that, what it's created is a much more civil place. The civility and the collegiality has improved, and it's helpful. It's been helpful to me on the legislative side because even they say, I'm more apt and willing to help someone like Phil Palmesano who's willing to reach out and listen. And yeah, he'll debate you and he'll stick it to you in the debate,
right.
But he does it with respect and on the issues and polite. And by having that dialogue, instead of just being the person who gets on their chair, yell and scream. I mean, I could be that guy because with my district, I could be on the chair, yell and scream, point the finger, say it's all your fault. But I tell people that's not me. My job is to try to find solutions and help people. And part of it is reaching across the aisle where we can get help on certain issues that might be helpful to my district and helpful to my region. And that's what I try to do on a daily basis, is to form relationships that can be helpful but also try to understand. And when we stop pointing the finger and blame at each other and try to listen, and I think that's a lot of times people in politics spend too much time talking and not enough time listening. And that's why I think this legislative exchange has been a really positive thing. It's been really well received by people in the district and also from downstate. It's been recognized for the efforts we put into this and some of the successes we've had, and I'm proud of that. It makes it better. And I think Washington can learn a little bit from that. We need more civility in our politics. We need more collegiality and trying to work together instead of pointing blame. Because if we try to focus on the people who put us there, we're going to want to look for solutions. And that's what I'm focused on doing as a legislator for this region.
So speaking to the working together aspect of this, if you look at the central portion of the Finger Lakes, the southern tier, parts of western New York, a lot of similar problems, a lot of similar issues and challenges. How difficult is it to work with a diverse region and still try to maintain that growth for the entire portion of upstate? Because we all are, in a sense, lumped together.
Sure. I mean, certainly you're always going to have certain parochial issues that come into play, but I think our goals are the same. We all want good schools. We all want good roads. We all want economic development and jobs in our people, so our young people stay here, so we don't look at the statistics another 10 years from now and see that 1 million New Yorkers have left our state, the outward migrations. We don't want that. I mean, that's kind of a trend we're seeing all across upstate, whether it's western New York, central New York, the Finger Lakes, the southern tier. That's a bad trend that we need to fix. And one way we can do that is by looking at our economic development policies in this state and making sure we have opportunities for our young people to stay here, so they have jobs that want to, after they grow, to come back and want to live here. And because let's face it, we have one of the most beautiful areas in the entire state, in the country. What a great place to raise a family. But we need to make sure we have opportunities for our kids and families to be here, so they can make a good living, to provide a living for their family, to raise a family here. And so there are opportunities. But we got to look for those common themes and denominators that where our challenges are, but also where our opportunities are. And I think you do that by talking and engaging and trying to find that common ground and working with people on both sides of the aisle and in different areas for that common goal. That's what we try to focus on.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like there has been a change in the sense that economic development now seems to be focusing more on keeping young people in the region, keeping them in New York State. That didn't really seem to be the case. I can think back to 10 years ago when I was graduating from high school. That wasn't really what we were hearing as much. That has to be a net positive for the region, right?
I would think that anything we can do to encourage our young people to be here through economic development opportunities. Obviously, we know education is an important part of that, but also I think the trades are an important aspect of our local communities. And, not steering people away from the trades, because college is a good thing, but sometimes it's not for everyone. But there are tremendous opportunities in the trades and advanced manufacturing that you can provide a good living in a good skill and have a good skill to take care of a family and have your self-sufficiency. But yes, we need to focus in on our young people, and that's when I was telling you before. My favorite thing to do is go in the classroom and talk to young people and tell them about getting involved. We want them; they are our future leaders, and there's tremendous opportunities. Yes, do we have our challenges? Yes, which is why we need people to be serious about going in, getting involved, and try to solve these problems. But we have tremendous opportunity and potential here. But we have to really look at the economic climate is a big part of that. When we look at property taxes and taxes, that weighs in on investments that people are going to make, whether to start a business or grow their business here. And you see policies like Startup New York, which I think is picking winners and losers. With that, the goal behind Startup New York, I tell people, really makes sense, because we recognize we have a tax problem, an over-regulation problem, and property tax problem. The problem is, by saying you have to be on a college campus or a SUNY campus to come in and get that benefit, that's ridiculous. We should be looking to cut taxes and regulations across the board. And we've seen how that's worked in even specific industries. Look at our craft beverage industry, the wineries, the breweries that are growing here, because we've looked to cut the red tape and regulations, so there is growth there. We should take that same example and kind of apply that across the board, on the manufacturing side, to make sure we're creating opportunities. I want to build things here in New York. I want to manufacture things in here, because those are good jobs. And with the development of technology, manufacturing isn't the same as it was 30, 40 years ago. There's a technology side. There's the computerization, the technology aspect of that. There's a lot going on, and we need to look about training and retraining our workforce. And I think this is a tremendous opportunity for our young people to be engaged in as well. And we have to promote that as well along this process.
So one of the items that's been billed as an economic development effort is the incinerator. Obviously, lots of opposition to it, almost universal. Your thoughts on the proposal as a whole, and why you decided to join the opposition to that proposal?
Yes, I'm absolutely adamantly opposed to this proposal. First of all, it does not fit into the characteristic of this community and region. I don't want a caravan of trash trucks coming up here to this region, and a 260-foot smokestack, and the picturesque Finger Lakes is not part of that. It's a terrible proposal in my position. I don't think this is something where it's going to create economic development and economic type of jobs that we need for our region. I think, in fact, it's going to be hurtful. I think it could be hurtful to our environment. And that's why I'm proud to be part of this growing coalition, working with Senator Helming, Assemblyman Brian Kolb, Senator Tom O'Mara, and working with these local community organizations, our schools, our the Wine and Business Coalition, the Gas Free Seneca. There's so many different groups out there this is a grassroots movement. And our goal is to stop this project, and we're convinced that we're going to stop it one way or another. We have to, because I don't think this is the right fit for this community. And I don't think this is going to be helpful. This isn't the type of economic development we're looking for. I'm a big proponent of economic development. There are things we can do in the depot there. There's tremendous opportunities for like solar in there. There's a lot of things we could do in this area that would benefit the region and give us the energy generation. But this is quite simply just a terrible proposal, which is not going to be good for the quality of life of the people of the Finger Lakes region. That's why I'm going to continue to make my voice heard on this issue and make sure that I'm representing the people of this region and make sure their voice is heard. I was very, very encouraged with the comments that the governor came out with this week, voicing his opposition to it. And we need to continue to work, and we will continue to work diligently to stop this proposal. Whatever phase it goes through, we will work hard to stop this. That's what I'm convinced and committed to doing.
Now, obviously, there are some folks out there who, as soon as we put this out on social media, when the governor made his remarks, the response was, well, there goes our chance for jobs. It sounds like you're pushing back against that a little bit and saying, whoa, wait a second. Let's pump the brakes and look at the right kinds of economic development instead of just taking anything that happens to fly our way.
Right. Listen, this trash incinerator project is not a job creator. In fact, I think it's going to be hurtful. It's going to be hurtful to certainly the multi-billion-dollar economic impact that our wineries and our breweries and our craft industry, our tourism industry has to our region. There are things we can do on the solar side. If we're looking for renewables that are better opportunity versus a trash incinerator, this is not the type of project we need in our district. This is not good for our water quality. It's not good for our air quality. So no, I don't think it is the right project for our region, and that's why I'm I'm glad to have the governor's support in it. I'm very critical of the governor on a lot of policies, and I'm glad that he's joined us in this call to try to stop this project. And then I'm convinced we need to stop this project for the quality of life for the residents of this region, and I'll continue to be an outspoken critic of this proposal.
Now, those of us in the media, we search back through the last 10, 15, 20 years, and we have trouble finding or thinking of an instance where there was this much universal support across party lines, across all the spectrums, just pretty much everybody saying this is not a good idea. Speak to that sort of universal coalition that's formed all the way from Lake Ontario down to practically the Pennsylvania border.
Yes, I mean, it's been, and that's why we want to give credit to it. And this is why you talk about getting involved in your community. I mean, this is a grassroots movement, one that I'm part to be proud of, and to lend my voice to support for that movement. We had a group of people that traveled up by bus this week, and I said, thank you for coming up here and make your voice heard. Think that this is located just a stone's throw away from a school, or in a stone's throw away from our precious Finger Lakes. I mean, this is because this is what this proposition has generated, this type of response. I've seen the comments for the attorney for the project who likes to call himself an environmentalist and has filed lawsuits in the past. This is not a welcome project here. My goal, I would ask hopefully the developer to withdraw the project. It's not welcome in the town. It's not welcome by the business and the community groups here. It's not a good thing for the environment. We don't need a caravan, 170 plus trash trucks a day coming up from New York City or wherever they may come from, barreling through our region and then getting burnt And that's not good for the environment, and we don't need that here. And that's why I think this is a grassroots movement of people that are coming together to speak out as one voice together, saying we're unified in this opposition, and we're going to continue to speak out, and push back on this proposal. We want the proposal to go away. I want the proposal to go away. There are a lot of opportunities for us for development here, a good kind of development, not a trash incinerator. And I'm committed to, there are opportunities for manufacturing here and growing our manufacturing base. And, the solar side of things has grown. We've seen that. There's certainly tremendous opportunity there in the depot, and there's tremendous opportunity for development of the depot. We all want to work to see that. Just don't believe this is the right proposal. It's not the right proposal for this region.
So let's shift gears a little bit.
Sure.
and jump back into Albany. Obviously, it seems like every day there's a new crisis or controversy or allegation. Your thoughts on former AG Eric Schneiderman, the allegations leveled against him, obviously very, very serious.
Sure.
He resigned. Your thoughts on the situation, but also what you hope to see in the process that's now going to be playing out
Sure.
throughout the state.
Certainly, those allegations that were made are very, very disturbing. That's the type of thing that we don't need from our leaders, especially the number one law enforcement officer of the state. We don't need that, and it's very disturbing. And this is the type of thing that concerns me, because it basically gives that negative impact about people in politics, which turns people off from getting involved, turns our young people off from getting engaged. And that's the thing I've tried to talk about over and over again, to try to steer away from, because unfortunately that's you have that. And that's why I tell people, don't be afraid to get involved, because there are things that are going to happen in the profession, and it paints the institution with a broad brush. And all you can do is try to do the right thing on behalf of your community. Like I tell people, listen, I have a 15-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son, and my wife of nearly 20 years. I have to go home and look them in the eye. I know if something's right or wrong. And just like I was saying, I talk to the kids in school. I mean, we know if we're making a decision if it's right or wrong. We're accountable for our own action. We have to lead by example, and those types of things are disturbing. And that's why even this past week, you've seen Sheldon Silver get convicted again for his abusing the power of his office to abuse and take advantage for self-gain. Those are the types of things that people have distrust. And you've seen it with the trials of close aides to Governor Cuomo, Mr. Prococo and Calitherios, with these projects in the Buffalo Billion. That's why we need certainly, there's legislation at our side with Brian Kolb and Bob Oakes, our region rep, for more transparency and more accountability in economic development programs. And also, let's look at term limits. Whether it's term limits in general or term limits for leaders in their positions, as far as being the Speaker of the Assembly for 22 plus years, like Sheldon Silver was, you get that grip on power. It's better to have a kind of a rotation. I don't think we need to have people in those types of positions for that long. Term limits, I think, just as a policy, I would support of. Why not look at term limits in the legislature at every level? Because I think that helps bring in new, fresh faces, and it will hopefully be a deterrent for people trying to use this position to abuse the public's trust. That's the thing I worry about, and we have to change that, because I firmly believe. I remember President George Bush Sr. used to say politics is a noble calling. I firmly believe it. We can make a difference in public service. I've seen it. I've seen the people we helped time and again. I go back to the person we helped when I was a staffer for Jim McCall's. That wasn't a lead story in the evening news that night, but it wasn't at the front page of the newspaper the next day. But to that family, we changed their life. That's what we're supposed to be doing with public service, being a voice for the people who might not have a voice or need help. That's where our focus needs to be when we're looking at policies and laws and our actions on a daily basis. And being a voice for those people who give us this privilege to represent them. I have the privilege to represent 133,000 people over 5 counties, and I take it very seriously. I work hard each and every day to do my best to honor that trust and confidence they placed in me, and I will continue to work hard on their behalf and do it in an honorable way.
So what if you were going to pick 2 to 3 items that you felt were the biggest successes thus far throughout the session, both sessions for that matter, Senate and Assembly? What are some of those big wins that you think that have been registered so far? Obviously, you're 2/3 or a little more through. So
sure, I think one of the biggest things that kind of was a continuation from last year that we were pushing from the get-go was for our developmentally disabled population to look for, obviously, the wage for the people that work with the development, direct care workers. That was something that was a priority for me. And I look at this simply as a quality of life issue. I had the privilege of many years ago to work with the developmentally disabled for our local ARC communities, and even spent a couple summers working with the developmentally disabled. These are individuals who were dealt a very bad hand in life at no fault of their own. And sometimes when they're in a group home, the only people they know that there's close to them, their family, are the staff that work there. And we've seen such a turnover in those agencies that provide this critical, important quality of life care. And when someone can leave and go make more money because the governor is driving up the prices at the fast food workers, but now with legislative approval through a commission, so I think to focus on the quality of life and quality of care of our most vulnerable New Yorkers and developmentally disabled by working on that to help the direct support staff workers in that process, that improves as a direct improvement to the quality of life and quality of care. And when I tell people, things you and I take for granted, going to a movie, going to the store, is a treat for some of these individuals. They need that dedicated staff to help deliver some of that quality of life. That was one of the things that continued through this process. I think some of the things we've continued to put a focus on, the fight on the opioid and heroin crisis that's been going on in our neighborhoods, that's got to continue to be a focus at every level. I tell people we've started to making some progress. We have a long way to go. What we were doing before we've started making some of these commitments, it was like one of the people, I may just use this quote, so I'm going to take it from him. He works in the field of providing help to people in substance abuse. He said it was like fighting a forest fire with a garden hose. We need a all hands on deck approach when it comes to this opioid and heroin problem. The federal government needs to be a partner, and I think we're starting to see some help from them. The state government has committed some much more resources to this issue, but it's a partner with our localities, the community groups, the church basements, or the fire department halls where these meetings are going on. We need to be a partner, and we've seen prevention and detoxification, making sure if someone needs help that there's a bed for them, and making sure the insurance companies are part of this process. Not a fail first policy. We're trying to change that thinking. One area where I think we've lacked in, that we seem to have an obstacle from some of our downstate colleagues, more liberal thinking, is on the enforcement side, giving tools to law enforcement. When you see people profiting off the death of these individuals or young people or people in our community, and you can't see a news story go by without someone overdosing on heroin or opioid every day. And I tell people this knows no boundaries of discrimination. It doesn't care the color of your skin. It doesn't care if you're rich or poor. It doesn't care if you're upstate or downstate. It doesn't care if you're Republican or Democrat. It will prey on you. And it's not necessarily we're going to arrest ourselves out of this problem. For the people who are using, they get caught up in a bad situation. We need to be able to lend that help who needs it. Where we need to go after these drug dealers who are profiting, who are coming up to our communities and preying on our young people and people in our community. We need tougher penalties. I know there's talk at the federal level about death penalty for these people who put drugs into people and they die. We have tougher penalties in Albany that have passed in the Senate, but the Assembly refuses to take up. I think that's something we need, stronger penalties for these people. I read a story where there was a drug bust down in New York City, near the airport. They confiscated enough fentanyl, which all this is being laced with it, to kill 3 million Americans, 3 million people. I mean, that's a sad,
mind-boggling.
It's mind-boggling. That's what they're doing. They're lacing this stuff, and people are dying each and every day. So we need to be able to provide a hand and the help to the person who needs it, take the stigma off it. So get out there and give the treatment and the education and awareness. But we have to go after the drug dealers who are profiting off the deaths of our young people in our communities all across the state. So those are some of the things I'm seeing. One of the things I'm proud of that we've been working on over the past number of years that we've seen a progress is that something Senator O'Meara and I, Senator Helming, and someone in Cole Oaks, is funding for our local infrastructure, something we continue to push. And that's something that I've been most proud of. That's money that goes right to the local communities, to towns, village, city, to fix their local roads and bridges. Because a lot of talk about infrastructure a lot. Always. Sometimes it's focused on downstate. And I'm a proponent of supporting the MTA because we have industries that support the MTA, like Alstom and Hornell, that provides rail and important jobs. But we're not opposed to it, but we want parity in our transportation laws. But why infrastructure, local infrastructure is important? Because I tell people, CHIPS is money that goes right to your local community so they can decide what local road or bridge to fix. Yep. But every dollar we invest in the CHIPS program is one less dollar that comes from the local property taxpayer. Mm-hmm. Every dollar we invest in the CHIPS program saves $6 to $14 in long-term rehabilitation costs. It saves the local property taxpayer money, but it's also a safety issue. How many of us put our kids on a school bus every morning and go over a local road or bridge? We don't need to see more stories in the news about a bridge collapsing and people dying. We can't be reactive in our policy to this. We have to be proactive. And why I'm proud, because we've formed a coalition, like a bipartisan coalition. This year we had over 142 legislators sign letters to the governor and legislative leaders that we need to increase and to continue to fund money for our local roads and bridges. What we've seen, funding where we were just 5 years ago, 6 years ago, compared to where we are now, every municipality, state, town, village, city, county is getting 50 to 55% more in resources to fix your local infrastructure than they were just 6 years ago. That's important because it is economic development. Why? Because those local people hire local contractors, hire local employees. It's a safety issue. We talked about the school kids getting on a school bus or an ambulance or police car getting to a first responder. And when I talk about economic development and tourism, we're living in wine country in the tourism industry. How great is it to have a state road, but if you can't, an interstate, great, but if the local road is a mess getting to that, what kind of message does that send?
Yeah.
In economic development, because business is located in towns, villages, and cities. So to get off the interstate, they have to go on a town road or a local road or county road to get there. We need to be a partner in this. The governor's helped in this process. I remember having conversations with him at the mansion one time, saying this is important, and he, and we've seen a partnership happen on this. We have to do more on that end. That's probably one of the other things I'm probably most proud of. Building a coalition. Like I said, this year we had 142 legislators in both houses sign on letters. So we're making progress in that area. We have that commitment's been strong. We're going to continue to push on that. I think that's one of the other areas that's important to me.
So the one item here that you brought in today that I definitely want to take a second to let you talk a little bit about, organ donation.
Thank you.
Something that a lot of people probably just, it's in the back of your mind. You don't think about it all the time. But it seems like you are advocating for something that's really awesome here. So talk to us a little bit about what you are pushing for and fighting for.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. I talk about this issue a lot, and for me it's very personal. My sister, Teresa, was a 2-time organ transplant recipient. She was a juvenile diabetic, which ravaged her body. The first time she had a transplant was in 2000 because of a kindness of a stranger. And in 2006, I had the privilege to donate a kidney to her. What it showed me, and I saw firsthand, is how organ donation can impact someone's life and their quality of life. I had other members, an aunt who had a lung transplant, or a liver transplant. An uncle had a lung transplant. Now, when I talk to people, I understand that sometimes this is a difficult subject to talk about because you're really thinking about your own death, and I get that. But what I try to say, think about it from this perspective. What if your mother or father, brother or sister, or God forbid your son or daughter were in need of a life-saving organ transplant and you lived in New York? And then now listen to the statistics I'm going to share with you. I didn't realize how bad. I tell people my sister was lucky. I didn't realize how bad it was until I got up to Albany in 2010 and saw these numbers. We have 52 registries across this country. New York is number 51 out of 52. We're only ahead of Puerto Rico. The national average for organ donation by rate is about 55%. The state of Montana is number 1 at 92%. New York is number 51 at 30%. We have nearly 9,500 New Yorkers right now waiting for an organ transplant. 1,700 have been waiting for over 5 years. Last year, we lost nearly 450 men, women, and children waiting for a life-saving organ transplant. But the numbers aren't all bad. What I tell people, one person who donates at the time of their death can save up to 8 lives and impact up to 75 others. I mean, that's real, meaningful impact on someone. I talk about this where I get the chance to because I want people to think differently about this issue. We've made some progress in the laws we passed. Lauren's Law. Now, when you fill out your license or go to your license, you have to answer yes, do you want to be an organ donor, or skip the question. A couple years ago, we became the 49th state in the country that allows 16 and 17-year-olds to register their intent to be an organ donor. Now, God forbid something happens to a 16 or 17-year-old, those parents would have that ultimate decision-making process. Right. But why is it important to get to people at a younger age? Because what are they doing at 16 and 17? They're registered to get their driver's license. Mm-hmm. So we have to get that question in front of people. Probably the thing I think is going to be the most transformational is we just created a new online registry. We're partnering with a not-for-profit organization to manage it. And I think this is transformation because now you can go online and register in a few clicks and you can be registered to be an organ donor, and there's security measures in there.
It's so easy.
It's so easy to do it. And I just tell people, I know it's a tough thing to think about, but just think if your son or daughter was in need of a life-saving organ transplant, you heard these numbers, they're discouraging. But we're making progress. And when I talk about these numbers, when I was talking about these numbers just a few years ago, it wasn't 30% our registration rate. We were at 23%. It wasn't 9,500 New Yorkers. It was over 10,000 New Yorkers on the waiting list. We lost nearly 600 New Yorkers when I used to talk about this number before. So we're making progress through working together. It's going out and sharing personal stories. And for me, to see the impact it had on my sister and her life. Unfortunately, she passed away in 2013, more from the complications that diabetes had on her body, right. From suffering a stroke. But I did see firsthand how it improved her life, and it was probably the thing I'm most proud of. I was able to be a part of it, to see the change in her. And that's out there. Are opportunities for us to make that type of that life-saving decision. And I tell people, we talk about a lot of issues in Albany, some good, some bad, but this is something that actually saves lives. And it doesn't mean you have to pass a lot of bills or spend a lot of money. It's more just getting awareness out there. Talk about the registry website, how you can get out there. Share information with your friend, or post it. If you're a business, post a link on your website, or tell people how we can get the word out. So we're making progress. So we're going to improve our numbers on this issue. We talk about being the Empire State. 51 out of 52. We're always last on. It's usually in the bad way. To think. We went with the business council to try to get them to try to help promote this to some of their members. They talk about being 49th or 50th in business climate. Maybe we can be better on organ donation. And we have to do better on this because this saves lives. I always say my catchphrase is we can and we must do better, and we will. By working together, we will do better on this issue because we'll save lives, and that's what it's all about.
All right, well, I really appreciate you coming in. Obviously, there was a lot to talk about. We'll be having you back probably over the summer to talk more about the different things going on.
Love to do that.
Really appreciate your time and your advocacy on this issue in particular. It's just really, really important. And like you said, something so easy that just anybody can do and jump in and get involved with.
That's right.
All right, well, that is going to do it for us today. I'd like to thank Assemblyman Palmesano, our listeners, and, of course, FingerLakes1.com for making this podcast possible. You can catch Inside the FLX Saturdays during the 10 o'clock hour on WDWN 89.1 FM in Auburn or 97.7 FM in Fulton. The program also airs Sundays and Tuesdays at 7 p.m. on Spectrum, channel 1304, and is available on iTunes, Stitcher, and the FingerLakes1.com app. Stay informed, Finger Lakes, and we will catch you next time.